Session, a paper reading session at 1:30. So now, without further ado, let me invite Arunesh, who's going to enlighten us with his paper on the possible worlds in Dalit cinema. Welcome, Arunesh.
Exactly how long do I have?
So you have 20 minutes and 10 minutes of paper reading and maybe 10 minutes for discussion. You told me that it's a brief paper, so I can
Sure. So, to start this, are you hungry, everyone? So it's time. Are you hungry? If yes, please tolerate for a little time because we're going to talk about some people, a particular sector of people who have been starved for like centuries together. So, possible worlds in Dalit cinema. When we look at this paper from a film point of view, perception, in 100 years of cinema, there was not a representative from the Dalit community for over some 90 years. Only from this decade, there was some representative who were there to represent their sufferings, their aesthetics as something in a positive way, unlike people who wants to use them as gym boys and other stuffs, mainly for unskilled labor works, who are saved by the martial communities and other hegemonic powers. So, moving into this, have everyone watched a film in Tamil called Kala by Paranj? Anyone watched the film? No. Yes. Okay. Anyone watched Slumdog Millionaire? Okay. So there is this problem where, moving into the possible worlds theory, I will summarize my paper first and move to the detailed explanation. So we all sometimes look at the space, dark night, the stars, and think at least once, what if there could be a world out there where we are something else? What if there is a possibility for us to be free from all this delusion of free will and everything that is forced upon us? So there is that aspiration for us. So when there was a conflict with the Catholics and the Armenians, when people are moving towards binaries, a particular set of people like Duns Scotus and others look for other possibilities. What if there are other escape routes? What if there are other possibilities? So that paved way to the origin of the pioneering this possible worlds theory. So then later on there came Leibniz, who proposed that possible worlds are different from actual worlds, and he used an example of Adam, that there are Adams in other possible worlds who stopped Eve from eating the forbidden fruit, who stopped Eve from going away, who stopped Eve from interacting with Satan, but we have a certain Adam as the perfect Adam in our actualist realism, because if the Adam did not commit this original sin, we would be immortals and there would be a perfect world where we would not exist. So we take him into the consideration only because he is the perfect one who is the reason for all this is happening, that is, looking it into the mereological point of view. These parts make our whole world. So, when David Lewis came into the picture, he proposed that there are concrete worlds outside and we have nothing with them. It's just and then came the counterpart theory, which said they are just merely our counterparts who are over there. So, this is the introduction of the possible worlds theory, which was even further developed when Saul Kripke came into the picture, and he said there are modal realisms and modal questions which create those possible worlds through our mind. That is, only if I would like to introduce a term called a diverse argument. John Divers wrote a book called Possible Worlds. So in that he proposes an argument that, say, for example, there is a word W. Only if there is a word W and there are certain values for them, they have haecceity value, we can conceive a world called W dash, say, which is different from our world. So, where this W dash is a part of our conception of a possible world. So, looking at this aspect, when these are just projection of our mind which aspires to be something it's not, which aspires for possibilities to escape the negativities that is happening around us. Look, going into the Indian political context, say for example, if I conceive, what if the Aryan invasion didn't take place in Indian context. Would there be caste in India? Would there be the hierarchy where everyone is placed one above another and one below another, and according to Indian psyche, until there are someone below us, we won't be fighting against this overall system. So there won't be this overall framework if the Aryan invasion or any other invasion didn't took place in Indian context. So it is a possibility where I'm changing a particular time frame to create an entirely different world that is not actually real. So let's take an axiom A for example. This is proposed directly by David Lewis. For every world there is some world that is that way. So when we conceive a world, it could be, let's say, what if there is no oppression in the world? It is a world I conceive, it could be, but it is not real. But according to Lewis, there is a possible world out there where this is possible. So Dalit cinema, I've taken the case study of Kala to be precise, paves way to this binary arguments of good versus bad, the overall conception of how we see good, how we see bad, and the deconstruction of how we look at the urban slums, and the deconstruction of how the so-called purifying and improving or reforming a certain group of people, like the previous presenter said, is only paying way to the colonizing their aesthetics, their way of life, and their lands. This politics is discussed in the movie Kala. So, this particular case study, when we look at it, this shows us that if there could be, according to the axiom A, when we go by it, if there could be a Dharavi in a slum in Mumbai, which is projected in the film, the Kala, there could be a Dharavi where there is a proletariat hero called Kala is there, who fights for them, and it is possible. And the reformation would take place if there could be a Kala. So this is how we could take into consideration the axiom A. So this particular Dalit cinema, when we look at it, they are existentially conservative. That is, there is an actual possibility, there is an actual value for it which can happen in reality. They are potent, where potency is, say, the ability to bring change into the world. The Dalit cinema is potent. We can bring change to them since the breadwinners from the oppressed communities cannot access their imaginative faculty because they have pursued their goose chase for their daily bread, just blunted their other aspiration rather than their daily fundamental necessities. They can't aspire, what if we go to moon? They are trying to aspire, I want to go to school. So that is the difference, that is the imbalance we are living in. So, according to George F. Kaufman and Libby, we are introduced to something called behavioral theory, which is highlighted here, where people just conceive certain things from the cartoons, films and dramas, songs, everything, and they just conceive themselves as the protagonist of it, paving way to something, a small change. Say, if these films with the possible worlds of a better aesthetic Dalit world, when these are projected repeatedly, the marginalized counterparts, they don't have access, they don't want to look into the documentaries and the so-called reformation screenings or certain things. They just want to escape in their struggles, so they watch the mainstream media films. So when these theories are brought into the mainstream media, the possible worlds created through the Dalit cinema is projected to them through the mainstream media. They aspire, which is the base argument of the possible worlds theory, to look for other possibilities. They aspire for a better world. They aspire to be the proletariat hero. They aspire to be the one to save them all. They aspire to reform their community, their land, and fight for them. So the urban resistance, as highlighted in the film, can actually be made possible through the cinema. Not just this, any cinema for any matter. When we highlight something, it is possible. So And moving into the modal realism, how it affects this. This modal realism, that is, what if, like the question I highlighted before, what if we do this? What if we behave like the Kala so that we can escape this capitalism and casteism? What if we act like this so that we can escape this hegemonic exertion of power on us? So, this kind of modal questions actually affect our real world. This actually pave way to the mirror stage, as Lacan proposes, like looking oneself in the mirror and to conceive them not in part but in whole. This is where I live in. Like, I am not an individual entity. This society is what is making me a complete human. The mirror stage is happening there, and social skepticism is happening. So, according to even to the metaphysics of the possible worlds, this world, the conceived possible worlds, are only distanced by a particular set of time frame. Say, for example, you have watched Slumdog Millionaire, right? So, you looked at a slum there in a Slumdog Millionaire, which is stinky, which is dark, which is deprived, colorless, and everything, right? So, there is a distance between the Slumdog Millionaire's Dharavi and Paranjit's Dharavi. So, this particular shift is distanced only by a small time frame. So, if the imaginative faculty is itself distanced, that is the argument of the aesthetics of the oppressed itself needs a particular time distance to happen. The social realist impact in our actual world needs a certain time too. So, by reverse processing this particular proposition, I say that the possible worlds are only distanced by a small non-synchronized time frame. So there is an actual possibility for the both Dharavis to exist, which is differentiated by the time frame. And I'd like to summarize it so that I can open up for more questions. To conclude this, I would like to say that the possible worlds which we conceive are not merely a projection of self or something. They can be real, as Duns Scotus or Leibniz proposes. But moving into a philosophical argument, I would like to say that the modal questions which I proposed earlier only pave way to a lot of signified and a Foucauldian's perspective, lot of signified which would pave way to modal signifier. Modal realism has productive impact in the subaltern dynamics due to its inevitable influence in both psychological mirror stage as coined by Lacan and social skepticism, which is catalyzed by the suspension of disbelief. That is, nobody is going to go and stay in a slum. Nobody is going to visit a slum. Even the politicians, they only visit the slum once in 5 years. So, it is only possible, the gaps can only be bridged between the oppressed and the elites only through the mainstream media, because nobody actually cares about the documentaries or the infotainments, because the mainstream media plays a greater role, as said by the Tamil Nadu's political activists, which after defeating the Congress said that the Congress didn't know the value of films. The Dravidian movements realized the value of films. We propagated our ideology through films and we won. So, mainstream media has a greater impact in this. So, taking into, I have said this, the time frame concept, and so moving into all these things, I would like to conclude my paper that the possible worlds theory give us the space for discussing the Dalit phobic Indian populace and the marginalized voices in a metaphysical construct, paving way for Dalit therapy. Dalit phobia and Dalit therapy are coined by Chandra Ban Prasad in the book Dalit Phobia, why do we hate them? So, it is a beautiful book actually. So, he proposes that the 3,500-year-old war since 1500 BC paved way to the inherent, even medical or genetical Dalit phobia in the minds of people, which makes them to fear being touched or even seen in the mainstream social realist spaces. So, the necessity for Dalit therapy, as Prasad argues, is due to the fact that unlike other phobias, Dalit phobias is genetically transferable and it is a medical problem. Having conditioning and exposure theory as the two non-drug methods, creation of counterpart of the oppressed voices in the mainstream becomes the only solution for it. The old stereotyped images of Dalits being indolent and incompetent need to be erased forever. The metaphysical experiment needs to be carried on as there is no guarantee that the coming generation of non-Dalits will not be Dalit haters. Therefore, the possible worlds created in Dalit cinema influences the earth people, that is our world people, to confront the hegemonic masses as they have visibly experienced success through the projection of self. It also helped the oppressors to identify how irrational caste can be, thereby helping in deconstructing the discrimination happening in the Indian society, in the caste system, both ways satisfying the base argument of this paper. That is, I'm not proposing that we can totally eradicate any problem, say feminism or the colonialism or even the war crimes or whatever. We can only resist. And possible worlds theory and the possible worlds, the aspiration to conceive a better world, the aspiration for reformation is only to resist the existing conformist, hegemonic, casteist spaces, so that we can actually keep it in check. As if you had read Amish Tripathi's Shiva trilogy, you would know that he proposes that the good and bad are always in constant battle. It is the good becomes evil and evil becomes good, and it is in a constant cyclic circles. So only you can resist what is evil at one point of time, and it can't be necessarily good. It can't be necessarily be evil forever. So it is only to resist this particular notion of oppression using any kind of tool to legitimize this kind of the possible world, which paved way to the quietism, the negative quietism, which was stereotyped through, for example, like when a woman says no, it is a yes. So this kind of negative quietism, when repeatedly asserted through film media, when can pave way to the existing pleasing scenario, why can't we force this kind of, why can't we project Dalits as someone friendly, hegemonic, not hegemonic, and someone who is just like us, not dark, color deprived and dangerous people. When we repeatedly project it through the mainstream media, there is a vast possibility that the Dalit phobia can be treated as Chandraban Prasad says as a Dalit therapy, as a non-drug method to treat the Dalit phobia. It is actually possible and it is concrete, it is possible, it is necessary, and this paper is satisfying that base argument. So thereby I am concluding my paper. I would like to ask hear from you.
Thank you, Arunesh. You have, I think, quite effectively questioned the stereotyping of images as seen, especially on the silver screen. This paper is open for discussion. I must tell you that it reminds me of Kanchailaya's rhetoric, for the inclusion of English, or the one way he sees forward for the Dalits is to learn English, a privilege that has been denied to them for generations, especially in India. It is, I think, the same kind of erasure of stereotypes and attributes that he talks about in almost all his writings. We have just time for one or two questions because just 5 minutes. We've been asked to report for lunch at 1:30 and we need to begin the next session precisely at 2.
If anyone has any other question after the 5 minutes, you can meet me there. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Maybe
you said in a paper that Dalits have rejected non-Dalits dignity sphere since the Vedic times. You have written in a paper like that under Dalit therapy.
Okay.
So I was thinking, it's the other way around.
Okay.
This is the non-Dalits rejecting and subordinating Dalits. You wrote that non-Dalits, Dalits rejected non-Dalits in every way possible.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you look at the base of Dalits, there can be only two possible binaries in Indian context. One is the Savarnas, another is Avarnas. The Savarnas, they live by a certain set of rules, which is constituted by the Hinduism. That is, beef-eating is bad, women, the menstruating women are evil. I will cite you an example where the pregnant women are not treated. The delivery is made only by Dalit women. They are brought from the outside settlements, from the slums, to perform the delivery. And the whole house is washed after they leave. So, the so-called, the dirty, the impure act are carried out by Dalits because Dalits are the people who are confined to that world, and the Savarnas are people who are the so-called pure classes. So, the only binary exists is Dalits and this. Say, beef eating is actually a challenge. Even when you look at it, Dalits can't be Hindus as Chandraban Prasad proposes, even Ambedkar proposes. Because there are some 11 rules which the Dalits, visibly or invisibly, they actually resisted, they violate those rules, which actually is a code to be a Hindu. One of it is very visible, that is beef, tanning, and say scavenging. So they can't be Hindus. So the Dalits actually challenge the non-Dalits in every medium, every way possible. So that is the actual reality which challenged them to, which actually created the phobia in the minds of non-Dalits. They fear them. They fear to be polluted. So they challenge them. Any other questions? Yeah.
You talked about possible words in Dalits.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you whether when you create another possible word as Dalit cinema, wouldn't it be tagged as Dalit cinema
Exactly.
and necessarily become the word of another? Because in Malayalam cinema we have something called money cinemas. That is, the hero is portrayed by Money,
Okay.
and it's something tagged as money cinema, and it's not accepted as in the mainstream media. And also when the mainstream media takes in more of these kinds of Dalit cinema including, there is a chance that Dalit phobia becomes increased because the high caste they will tend to face a danger of losing their position, and they might become more aggressive to them. So how do you address that? The possibility of tagline as other of the being the Dalit cinema as being sidelined, not accepted in the mainstream.
This is a similar question to that shame question. When we are forced, when we are oppressed using a certain terminology, it becomes necessary to gain power using the same terminology. Only when you use the word which defames you, which confines you to a very, very low position, you can actually gain the respect. Say for example, right now, the Dalit cinema industries and Dalit literature, they are blending into the mainstream, which is not possible some 20 years ago when Bama and Tamil Nadu started writing Karku. It is blending into mainstream. There is a Dalit film festival happening in New York right now, where it is exclusively only for Dalits, the Dalit films, and the films are being screened. So when I actually propose a genre called the Dalit cinema, it is kind of synonymous to a feminist cinema or it is kind of a trend which will eventually blend into the mainstream, which is happening right now. And only when these kind of tabooed or overshadowed or deliberately confined genres blend into the mainstream, we can have a visible change in the reality. So when we fear that there will be social exclusion, it is already there. And I visibly see that people who have no idea how a Dharavi slum could be aesthetically valuable and beautiful, having cultural values, and even say how there was another film by Paranjit called Madras, which highlighted the housing board politics, which highlights the 1989 STSD Prevention Act, how Dalits were deliberately made accused and put into jail, and a lot of things happened. We can actually see that even a retired police woman openly claimed that I deliberately accused them and filed them in false cases. So it is there, and it is only to resist, as I said earlier. Only if we resist this particular kind of things using the same terminology which they use to victimize the oppressed class of people, the caste people, we can actually see a visible change. So that's how we can gain power, which is also moves to a broader argument of, say, we can see when the reservation argument comes up, people say, why do you need caste for this? Because only when you use an oppressed kind of a tool to actually gain power, people will start to look at it as very differently. The thing we need is difference. The difference is actually what we need. So that is happening right now.
One question.
Yeah.
How do you find this appropriation that is happening in films? Like, for example, Rajinikanth being Gala,
Yeah.
or Ranveer Singh being Gully Boy, things like that happening, this appropriation, and they have another kind of persona in the politics. Then that kind of.
See, possible worlds is actually kind of it argues about creating a fictional world. Possible worlds is itself a fictional world because it is created in our mind. So, when you compare a social realist document, say the actual world, and a fictional world, it is always not necessarily the same. Say for example, in Mulk Rajan's Untouchable, an Untouchable is made into a Gandhian, which is really impossible and absurd. See, a fictional document cannot obviously advocate a social realist document. Say Rajinikanth is kind of have a different political stance, but a film media is only a projection of a director, the ideology of Paranjit, say, and he is an ardent Ambedkarite. And even he organized, as I noted in my paper, a Neelam cultural festival which highlights the aesthetics of the so-called untouched Ghana music and other casteless collective. So there is a visible resistance happening. So that's how we should see it. Say for example, even we have some negative thoughts over the feminist issue as you spoke, but it is necessary to let people speak. When we try to pull them down when they speak, there can't be a possible world where people can be equal. So, any other questions? Yeah.
You were talking about the Dalit film, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the film industry, whether it is Mollywood, Tollywood, or Bollywood, we can see that there is a trend that most of the stories are revolving around the superstars or around the heroic figures. So, taking the Malayalam film industry, there are actors who hesitate to cast the role of untouchables and outcasts. So, for instance, in taking any Malayalam movie, the leading character will be belonging to the Nair or the Maiden or any other high class. Okay? So, my question is, does the film industry itself marginalize the Dalit and Dalit issues for they won't get a huge profit from this?
See, there was a film called B.R. Ambedkar, acted by Mammootty. Was it actually screened in all the theatres?
No.
Why? Because of Dalit Phobia. People are not ready to accept those films, and the theatrical owners, the distributors are not ready to get those films and actually film them in the mainstream theatres. So that is the problem. The film industry is not marginalized. The films, any art form is open for all the people. Like romantics advocate, it is for everybody. It is only the people who have to buy them are hesitant or phobic towards them. And this was even in the case of Tamil film industry, this is the actual case, which was deconstructed by this director called Ranjit. After he projected that Dalit films, the oppressed films can be accepted in the mainstream, which will do better business than the superstars films. People started buying those films and distributing them in theatres, which paved way to another film called Pariyan, which is a sensational hit in Tamil. It was produced by the same director. So it is only when we show that people can buy those films, we can make things happen. It is only because of the distributor's point of view, and see, the producer council are filled with those people, the Dalit phobic people. The producer council, the casting people, and a lot of people, say in the film industry. All those unskilled works are done by the working class, whereas the fame getting the fame and getting the spotlight is done by the so-called hegemonic people, the upper class. So it is there, and the film industry or any art form is never marginalizing anybody. It is only the people who are there, the people who have to get them are marginalizing a certain set of art, as said by another girl, by labeling it as a Dalit film industry. People won't buy it, which is actually seen in a lot of screening of these kind of films. People don't buy those books, Dalit literature. People don't actually see the documentary. Say Kapoor's was a documentary about the manual scavenging. It didn't come to mainstream because it is not commercialized, and this kind of commercialization actually breaks the norm that people can accept those films. And when it is affected by a superstar, say like Rajinikanth, it gets a spotlight it actually deserves. It is being spoken about, the politics is being spoken about, and it is visibly everywhere right now. For all these years, the blue color or the Ambedkari movement, the Dalit movement is not visible in common spaces, which was dominated by the Dravidian movement. But right now, after the advent of the commercial mainstream media and films, people actually started talking about these films. There's actually an album called Castless Collective, produced by this particular director, Ranjit, which actually made to the top 10 music left albums from an Australian critic. So, it is happening. Art never marginalizes people. People marginalize people. So we can.
I think that's the right note on which we can conclude the session. People marginalize people, and maybe have more force now to possible worlds where everyone has their own space.
It is actually also to say that we can discuss politics or any of this issue in any field, in any discipline. We can actually bring these, say for example, some people say that there are certain stages to talk about politics. No. Politics is everywhere, it is inherent. Say for example, when I looked there was silver tumblers for everyone in Kannur University there. But there was 2 tumbler system practiced in Tamil Nadu where glass tumblers are for the marginalized and the silver tumbler for marginalized and glass for the hegemony classes. Even tumbler has politics. So does studies and every disciplines. So I just want to make a point that we can discuss politics in everything possible.
Thank you very much. Very powerful.